so that they can be ready to receive once those tanks are on the battlefield. Another point that's worth making is it's not just about how to operate the Abrams. It's a Christmas question. It's how to maintain them. It's how to have an organic supply chain process, a logistical sustainment process, so that you can keep them maintained and in the fight over the long haul.
That's what we're talking we always hear after announcements like this, we talk about the Russian, without the change, the Russian threats of escalation, or talking about Russian red lines. I feel like those threats at this point are both just part of the wars, but also stuff like the key.
Russian threats
don't seem to stop anything.
Well, we don't look, we don't just take anything for granted when they say it, and we're not dismissive. That said, these tanks are meant to help Ukraine fight effectively on open terrain to defend their sovereignty and their territory and to win back territory that the Russians have taken from them. And as the president said, they don't represent an offense to Russia. Do they represent a threat to Russian soldiers? You bet they do, but not to Russian soldiers that are in Ukraine, not to Russia proper.
Thank you, David. Hi, John. I should still ask my question. But
good. So we can go to the next one.
I have to put up with that. The expectation that these tanks will be delivered within months, at least 4 months. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. But also the reports that the Russians might launch a counterattack now. Do you see this as a catalyst for the Russians now to launch an attack, to escalate the war in a way to stop them before they receive these tanks? If they're going to make any change in the war?
I never do well if I try to speak for the Russians and try to get inside their head and what their intents are. What we do believe, all I can tell you is what we believe, and that is that the Russians, Mr. Putin, will use the winter not only to conduct operations, which he is in fact sold it on, but to use it to regroup, to retrain, to re-equip, and to prepare himself for continued fighting when the weather improves. So we want to make sure that we're using this time as best we can. To help the Ukrainians in the fight that they're in today, but make sure that they're ready for the fight tomorrow, that they're ready to defend themselves against whatever offensive operations the Russians might be planning to do when the weather improves. So I can't predict perfectly how this is going to go, but this is very much, some of the criticism I've heard, and I've heard it when I was at the Pentagon too, is it's hand to mouth, and you guys aren't thinking ahead, and it's just whatever the need is for today. And this decision today is very much indicative of the president's long-term commitment to Ukraine and how he has tasked the national security team to think ahead, to plan ahead, to help the Ukrainians get ahead of what's coming down the pipe.
Can I follow up?
Two quick follow-ups. You noted that our military aid to Ukraine has evolved with conditions on the ground, and the president previously said that these M1 Abrams were needed to liberate Ukraine. Does the administration expect any operations moving forward that would include retaking Crimea or lands that were lost during the Russian invasion?
I'm not going to talk about Ukrainian operations. I would just never violate their operational security, certainly with divulge from the podium what their plans and intentions are. I will only say this, that we do not dictate to the Ukrainians how they operate, where they operate, what missions they conduct, what targets they choose. We help them with usable information and intelligence as best we can so that they can be successful, but these are their decisions to make. It is their country, their war. Our job is to make sure that they can prosecute that war successfully.
I want to follow up to make sure that I understood you correctly. You said previously in your assessment of both military and economic aid to Ukraine that at this point, thus far, you haven't seen any signs of corruption or misuse.
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how the U.S. settled on the number of tanks it's providing, 31?
Yeah.
Very specific number.
I kind of got to it a little earlier. It's basically the size of a Ukrainian tank battalion. In America, and I'm getting a little bit astray of my knowledge. I was a naval officer, but as I understand it, an American tank battalion has about 50 tanks in it, and it's organized with more companies that comprise the battalion than in Ukraine. It's just the way the Ukrainian army is organized. It's not right or wrong. It's just that their battalions are basically at, I believe, 2 companies, so they're just smaller. And so 2 companies, that's about 15 tanks a company, and that's how you get to 30, 31. And then usually at least one of these tanks is the commander's in there, and so you've got a command and control tank that sort of is in charge of how they're operating on the field. And now I'm really, really going astray of my expertise. But I think that's as far as I can go.
The Ukrainians said today, thank you very much. Now how about some fourth-generation fighter jets? What are the chances of that happening?
We're in constant discussions with the Ukrainians about their capabilities, and as I've said, we evolve those as the conditions change. Can't blame the Ukrainians for wanting more and more systems. It's not the first time that they've talked about fighter jets, but I don't have any announcements to make on that front.
Is there concern that if any of these tanks were to fall in Russian hands, they would have access to the latest U.S. technology?
There's always what we call tech transfer concerns, and I mean that would be the case with other systems that we have provided to Ukraine. But if this doesn't kind of get to the corruption question, but not really, we just haven't seen any indications that any of the material that we have provided Ukraine isn't being stored appropriately, used appropriately, maintained appropriately, and being fought with appropriately. We're just not seeing that happen. But is that a potential risk? It's always a risk in war. It's a risk when we fight a war. But that's why we're working so closely with the Ukrainians on accountability, and we've really increased our efforts through the Defense Attaché's office in key to work with the Ukrainians on accountability so that we have a better sight picture on where these things are at any given time. But it's a war, and you can't forget that. I mean, it's a war.
Thanks, Grant. John, why not take the Abrams out of existing stocks to get them there faster? Is there a reason that you want more training before that happens, or is there some U.S. need that you want to keep?
The Pentagon assesses that they don't have any excess Abrams in their inventory. That all of them are gainfully employed, if you will, for our own national security defense. And even if there were excess tanks, the process of getting them to Ukraine to prepare them for use by Ukrainians, to train Ukrainians, to put all the parts and supplies in place would take many months anyway. So it's not like this procurement process is really costing us any time than if we just drew them down out of our own stocks. But the real reason is we just don't have them. We don't have excess tanks. The second thing is, and this is not unimportant, is that, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, when they get there, we want to make sure that they fall on ready hands and that the Ukrainians know how to use them. They know how to keep them running, and they've got the supply chain in place for spare parts and supplies and anything else they need, so that they can be more effective on the battlefield.
What's the process? What's the soonest the Abrams could get there?
The Pentagon, I think, talked about this earlier today. There's no date certain on the calendar. I think what we're looking at is probably going to be many months before they're actually there.
Thank you. Josh, so to your point about longer term planning and absorption rate from Ukrainians, and also picking up from Sebastian's question about the number of tanks, the advisor to Zelensky's office, Mikhailo Podolyak, actually told my colleague after this announcement that what they need is about 200 to 350 tanks from the West. So is that a realistic number? If not now, maybe in the future, if the Ukrainians should happen to prove that they can absorb these initial tranche of tanks and they can maintain it?
I don't think it's wise to get ahead of where we are right now. We are focused on working on this program to get them, procure them, these 31 Abrams tanks, to include all the supplies and parts that go with it and the training that's required to operate and maintain them. And we know, certainly based on the conversation the President had this morning, that our allies and partners in Europe are likewise focused now on moving additional armored capability to include these now German Leopard tanks in a shorter period of time.
To be clear, the future shipments of tanks is not off the table.
We're focused on the announcement the President just made.
One more really quickly. He also said that the next step for Ukrainians will be to request extended range missiles. Is that also under consideration?
We are in constant conversation with the Ukrainians about their capabilities. I don't have any announcements.
With many months being the time frame, is it fair to say that these tanks will not be available for use for the spring offensive? And secondly, one of the concerns in the lead up in the debate about this was fuel concerns. How is that being dealt with?
Well, that's part of the supply chain issue, isn't it? I mean, it's a jet engine, it's a gas turbine engine, which is jet fuel. So there's a specific type of fuel that powers the Abrams, and we've got to make sure that pipeline, literally and figuratively, is available to Ukraine. So that's going to take some time as well. And look, I'm not going to predict date certain on the calendar. It's going to take many months before the tanks get there. And let's not get ahead of specific spring offensives. We do think as the weather improves, the Russians are going to want to increase their tempo. We want to make sure that the Ukrainians can not only meet that tempo, but be capable of their own. And what that looks like and when that starts or where, that's really up to President Zelensky and his military advisors. We wouldn't speak to that. Only thing I'd add to that, Amr, is that the Leopard tanks won't take quite as long to get on the ground. And again, I'll let the Germans speak to this, but they won't take the same length of time that the Abrams will in order to arrive.
To follow up on you'll go after.
I'm sorry. I screwed up the flow.
To follow up on Amr's question about the minimum timeline, can you articulate then why this decision was not, why it did not take place sooner, given Ukrainian demand and given the demand of the petition?
You could ask that question about almost any system that we've provided, and my answer will always be the same. We are in constant conversation with the Ukrainians about their needs and doing the best we can to address those needs, both short term and long term. And the decision that the President announced today was the result of a lot of conversations with the Ukrainians as well as with our allies and partners. And it is very much, as I answered before, it's very much about forecasting. It's about trying to get ahead of the kinds of fighting that we see coming in coming months here in the spring and the summer of this year.
Follow up, and to broaden it out actually beyond the situation of Russia and Ukraine, I was struck by something the President said today about ensuring that neighbors cannot steal other neighbors' territory. It's something you all have brought up many times. And I'm curious if you can kind of help us understand why the administration has not changed course on your predecessor, former President Donald Trump's position on the Golan Heights, and what makes that situation distinct from what's going on in Russia and Ukraine.
Look, the different scenarios completely, and I'm not here prepared to talk much about that, except to say we've been very consistent that we want to see a two-state solution, and we believe the president believes that a two-state solution is possible and could be viable. But it takes both sides to be willing to commit to that, and we don't want to see either side take unilateral actions that would decrease the possibility of actually reaching a two-state solution.
Could you please bring us a little bit behind the scenes about the negotiations?
You're behind her. I can't see that.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could give us some details about the negotiations behind the scenes with the Europeans.
What
What
is
kind
our
of
behind the scenes at the podium?
yeah, a little bit. Especially what type of conversations have there been with the European Union and with the government of the state?
The discussions have been very robust with our European allies and partners, again, for many weeks here. And certainly the discussion today that the president had with his counterparts in the UK, France, Germany, and Italy was, again, very productive, very candid. All these leaders are rightly focused on doing what they can to help Ukraine and rightly focused on the future. I can't speak for Spanish decision making here. Spain obviously has been a contributor and a supporter of Ukraine, and that's always welcome. And I think the president addressed some of their contributions today, and we look forward to continuing to work closely with Spain going forward.
I'm sorry. No,
Okay.
thank you.
Wait. You don't have a question, James? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Can we just have this for the
Oh my goodness, yes. I'm going to frame that transcript. Holy mackerel.
This is simply a tribute to your own loquacity and thoroughness in briefing us.
Loquacity is James Rosen for eloquence? Is that?
I have two questions for
All
you.
right, go ahead.
So we don't know yet how Russia will respond, but if Moscow chooses a major escalation and decides to strike NATO, either Poland or the Baltics, does the NATO, do you have enough troops in the region right now to respond? And from day one, not 5 months ahead. And the second question would be, many of those who called for sending Leopards and Abrams to Ukraine argued that Russia right now is militarily too weakened to respond conventionally in a significant way. How confident are you in this assessment that Russia is so weak that, or maybe you have a different assessment, but many people think that Russia is too weak to respond in a significant way to the move that was just announced about tanks?
Let me take the second one first. There's no question that Russia's military is weaker today than it was 11 months ago. When you talk about the resources and the casualties that they have sunk into this unprovoked war of theirs, and the literally thousands of missiles and rockets, and now drones that they have launched into Ukrainian territory. I mean, they have burned through a lot of inventory, and they have suffered a lot of casualties, killed and wounded. So there's no question that their military is weaker for Putin's folly here. That said, you don't have to look very far. Just the news coverage to see that the Russian military and their folks are still pretty lethal because Ukrainians continue to die every day. So I think if you were to ask a Ukrainian here, how weak is Russia, I don't think that they would tell you that there's not still fight left there. And that's why we're so focused on making sure that Ukraine can continue to defend itself and to have the capabilities to fight back and to succeed on the battlefield. On your first question, all I can tell you is we've seen absolutely no indication that Mr. Putin has designs on striking NATO territory. And President Biden has said since the very beginning of this conflict that we take our Article 5 commitments to NATO seriously. Article 5, of course, is the notion that an attack on one is an attack on all. And we take that seriously. In fact, we take it so seriously that President Biden ordered an additional 20,000 American troops alone onto the European continent, and they still are there. Now, we'll be rotating them in and out, but the net number of 100,000 American troops on the European continent has stayed the same and will stay the same for the foreseeable future. Make no mistake, the security environment in Europe has changed. Not is changing, not will change. It has changed because of what Mr. Putin did. And the United States anteed up for that and made clear to our NATO allies, particularly on the eastern flank, how seriously we take our responsibilities to those Article 5 commitments. And Mr. Putin needs to understand that.
That's true, because many of those countries sent its own tanks, missile systems to Ukraine.
Well, we're sending missile systems, and now we're sending tanks to Ukraine as well. Every nation is making these decisions as best they can to support Ukraine, but they also still have sovereign responsibilities to their citizens to defend their countries. And so they're all making that calculus, as are we. I can tell you that from our perspective, I can't speak for every NATO ally, we are confident that we have the capability, the energy, the talent, the manpower, the resources to meet our Article 5 commitments to our NATO allies.
Are there any signs of a nuclear threat? Thank you, Carrie and John. Got two questions about China. First, Korea told us yesterday that the U.S. has been communicating with China about the implications of helping Russia. Can you tell us what China's response was to U.S. communication, and if China continues to provide economic support, and including by selling non-lethal military aid to Russia, would the U.S. impose stronger measures than just communicating?
I won't get ahead of decisions that have been made, and I'm certainly not going to detail diplomatic conversations. We've been very clear publicly, and we certainly have been clear in private settings with Chinese leaders that we don't believe that now is the time for business as usual with Russia, and that we want to see every nation sign up to the strict sanctions regime and abide by those sanctions, meet those sanctions, and do nothing to support Russia. Now, every country makes their decisions for themselves, just like I said before. And China's going to have choices that they're going to have to continue to make here about what side they want to be on. We know they're still buying Russian oil, for instance, and it's not clear, whether they will abide by the cap. But this is the time for the international community, and you're seeing so much of it today in this decision to really continue to rally around Ukraine and to make the right decision.
Follow up on China. Sorry. So China's been saying that there's 70K COVID deaths in just over a month, up from just a dozen reported earlier this month. Does the U.S. believe that new number by the Chinese government, saying that there's been 70K?
The Chinese, that we have continued to encourage the Chinese to be cooperative with international reviews and studies about COVID, and they have not been fully transparent. And we cannot speak to the veracity of those numbers. We urge China to be fully transparent about what's going on.
Sorry.
I think, ma'am, I gotta
Appreciate it. We all have questions. Back to the timeline, if I may, you saying repeatedly today that it's going to take many months for all these things to be delivered. Taking a step back, should Americans see that as a sign of a harsh reality that this war is nowhere near over?
I think we need to prepare ourselves to continue to have to continue to support Ukraine for quite some time. I can't be perfectly predictive on that. And I obviously, you heard the president say this today. We'd like to see this war end today, and it absolutely could. All Putin has to do is pull his troops out of Ukraine, call it a day, and it's over. But he has shown no signs of being willing to do that. And so we got to make sure that Ukraine can succeed on the battlefield so that they can succeed at the negotiating table. And it's difficult to be able to predict how long this is going to go on. But we have to be prepared. And this is I think, to get to your question. Well, I can't tell the American people exactly how long it's going to take. We have to be prepared to stay at this task of supporting Ukraine, as the president said, for as long as it takes, with the expectation clearly that we want it to end quickly. We want it to end now. But again, we have to stay at that task. And there's been terrific bipartisan support here in town, bicameral and bipartisan support here in town for support to Ukraine. And the American people, as the president said, they too have been supportive of this. They understand what's at stake, and it's obviously Ukrainian sovereignty and Ukrainian lives, but it's bigger than that. It's about the principle of sovereignty.
There's also been bipartisan outrage and frustration over the last few days that there are just more and more disclosures of classified documents showing up in places where they were not supposed to be. From a national security perspective, you work in national security, how concerned are you, and does the system need reform?
I'm going to defer most of the document questions to Kareem. The only thing I'd say here is that you're welcome.
Thank you.
Obviously, the president, you've heard Kareem say, takes the treatment of classified material seriously. I can assure you that everybody here does too, and the National Security Council staff. We deal with classified material every single day. You have to do that. We all know what the rules are. We follow the rules. And the procedures exist for a reason, and they've been developed over many, many years as the nature of classified material has changed. Now include electronic capability. And so we're working at that very, very hard. I don't have any changes to speak to. The process of classified material handling, not process, but the guidelines change over time as technology changes, and we're always reviewing those procedures to make sure that they're fully appropriate.
Is there a problem with overclassification?
Is there a problem with Well, I think it's always a balance, and you're always trying to meet that balance about whether things are classified appropriately. And the intelligence community works at this. So obviously, we work at this. I wouldn't go so far as to slap a band-aid on and say, yeah, everything's overclassified, but it's a balance that we try to strike to make sure that everything is appropriately marked and appropriately handled. But it varies from document to document and from issue to issue.
A quick one on Germany. At any point during the conversations with Germany, they make the network deployment contingent on the U.S. sending the immigrants. And can you give us some sense of what led to the joint decision? I mean, I'm just trying to understand. You didn't want to send the tanks, then you decided to send the tanks.
What tanks were never off the table. So we have been nothing but honest and transparent about the particular challenges of the Abrams, which they're still those challenges still exist. I mean, it's still going to require a unique supply chain and maintenance requirements and jet fuel and all that stuff is still valid. We've been very honest about that. The decision today was the result of many, many discussions with the Germans as well as our allies and partners about what Ukraine is going to need going forward and how we can all best address that.
Can I take a question? You jumped into a little bit around the training process for learning how to moderate these tanks. What is involved in that? How long do you think it would take Ukrainians to get up to speed? When do you think it's expected to start? Where would it be? Would it be in Ukraine or somewhere else?
We're still working our way through the details of that, and I'll refer you to the Defense Department for more granularity. I can tell you a few things. One, the training will absolutely not occur in Ukraine, but they haven't landed a location for where that would take place. But it won't be inside Ukraine, clearly. And they will run an ambitious training program for them, as we have on every other system. The Patriot battery training is ongoing right now at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and they've been.
Okay, and I got to add a couple things here. First off, Kirby lied earlier when he said that an Abrams uses a very specific fuel. That's bullshit. I'm going to show you that as soon as he's done with this speech. He's trying to say that Cogburn, the whole world who is supporting Ukraine is at war with Russia. They are supporting the war. Russia is at war with everyone. And so she was speaking analytically as opposed to factually. There is no declaration of war between Germany and Russia. There is no declaration of war from Russia against Germany. There are no hostilities between Russia and Germany. So it's really hard to have a war with someone when no shots have been fired, no aggressive actions have been taken, and there is no declaration of war by either side. So people can say whatever the fuck they want. The actuality of it is they are not at war. And this is where people throw shit all out of context because people misspeak or they're speaking as in reference to something, but not, or what's the damn word I'm looking for? Not sarcastically, but something like that. Anyway, I can't think of the word I want right now. Facetious. So Kirby pointed out that the tanks need a very specific type of fuel, and we've got to make sure that they get that there. That's a fucking lie, Kirby. The Ukrainians don't have enough fuel trucks to support the problems that they've already got right now, and they need more fuel trucks on the battlefield. So Kirby and the U.S. is using that as a fucking excuse to send a bunch of fuel trucks and a bunch of fuel lines and a bunch of fuel bladders and a bunch of other shit we want to get rid of into Ukraine. That's what that is. It's a complete fucking lie, and I can prove it right here, right now, because this is a list. What fuels does an Abrams use? The American M1 Abrams is powered by a gas turbine engine. This turbine engine works with a range of fuels, including ordinary gasoline, diesel fuel, and jet fuel. So, yeah, diesel, gasoline, kerosene, fucking motor oil, if you put some thinner into it. I mean, folks, the U.S. military has been making multi-fuel vehicles since World War II. It is a requirement that all equipment within the U.S. military be able to operate on multi-fuel. You can pour liquor in the motherfucker and it'll drive down the road. I know, my great uncle did it in World War II. There you go, Homestead. It'll run on vodka. So for Kirby to sit there and say, oh, it's got to have a special kind of fuel, you're a lying motherfucker. And you know that. There is no way a rear admiral of the U.S. Navy does not know that an Abrams will run on almost anything. So they can talk their shit. We fucking know better. Now, the other thing they didn't talk about was the B-52s that flew over. And that is a totally different story that is so fucking far out there, you're not even going to believe it when we tell it to you. So that's going to come up as soon as Kirby is done talking here, because the more we research this B-52 story, the less sense it makes. There's nothing that is lining up on this B-52 flight that flew over there. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the fact that they're not saying shit about the friggin' frigate that came over from Russia with 16 so-called hypersonic missiles on it that are nuclear tipped. So we're going to talk about the B-52s. We're going to talk about the friggin' frigate, and we're going to talk about more of these lies that are coming out of the White House just as soon as Kirby is done with his brief here.
been able to accelerate parts of that to get Ukrainians trained up on it at a pace that's a little faster than what we would do. Because
and the thing I left out is he just said that they're training on the Patriot missile batteries at Fort Sill. Well, you know what else they're training on? They're training on Avenger missile launchers at Fort Sill also. I've been making some fucking phone calls. So they don't. Avenger missiles are going, folks, with Stingers. 8 Stingers, a 50 cal on the side of it, a long-range thermal imager, and guess what? Everything, people keep saying that, oh, they're stripping all of the equipment off. There's not going to be any secure equipment in these vehicles. Oh, no, the top secret stuff is coming off. You're a lying motherfucker, because FBCB2 and IBAS, as well as ITAS, are on every single one of the Bradleys that are going over there. We've already filmed them. Same thing for the tanks that are going over there. Every single one of those tanks has an independent commander's thermal viewer. Got a tick. So they can claim whatever they want, but we, with our own eyes, can sit here and watch that equipment go over there. And you can't tell me that they're not sending it because it's on it. It's mounted on the outside. It's not like it's something on the inside that they're going to pull out. And then the vehicles that we saw the other day, they said, well, they're not going to get all the high-tech stuff on the inside. Well, you know what? They do, because when they opened up the back of the tank, there's a fucking FBCB2 terminal right in the back of the tank. So my question is, if you're not sending it to them, how come it's mounted on the fucking wall inside the Bradley? Yeah, they're going to put them on a ship, but manslaughter, I saw them with us today. Wednesday, I saw them when they left the facility on Monday morning. I posted the video of the train pulling the Abrams out of the facility in Arizona on Monday. Yesterday, everybody's making a big deal about, oh, they're in Kansas. We've fucking known since Monday. We showed everybody on Monday. This is the thing about KLW World News compared to all these other people. They have no fucking clue until days later. Or weeks or months or if ever. Absolutely, Randy. They're unlike any other system out there. Bradleys are badass. I know. I was part of IBAS, which is Improved Bradley Acquisition Site, and ITAS, which is Improved TOW Acquisition Site. And a TOW is a missile, and that TOW missile stands for Tube Launch Optically Tracked Wire Guided, and they have an enhanced range. So the Bradleys are going away in the U.S. inventory. We're going to go to something else. And the Abrams, as we know them, are going away. We're going to the new Abrams X. And so why not send that depleted uranium hull to some other country to rot away in, as opposed to the U.S. military having to deal with them forever here? You got to understand, in the United States, all of the militaries, we used to give all of our shit to the Marine Corps. So when nobody wanted it anymore, when nobody liked it anymore, when it was all obsolete, what did they do? They gave it to the Marines. The Marines were the red-headed stepchild of the United States military. And anybody that's ever been in a Marine, they will tell you. But now we don't do that anymore. Now the Marines have a better budget. Now the Marines are taken care of a little bit better. They're not stepchildren anymore. They've actually adopted them now. Okay? So the Marines are taken a little better care of. So instead of all of the shit that we don't want anymore, forcing it on the Marines and making those guys go out there and try to make it work, instead of that, we're actually giving it to other countries. They just lie. That's how the operation works. It's an excuse. They're trying to cover. So anyway, let's let Kirby continue on with this bullshit story about Abrams run on a very special fuel. Right. They run on fucking pixie dust and unicorn parts.
The need is execute. And I think you can expect that the Pentagon will take that same approach on the training on the Abrams. But how long is it going to take? I really am not able to say. They're still working.
I said Avenger units that fire Stinger missiles, Chris. Pay attention, soldier.
The way through that. We don't think that it will take too much longer. I'd say probably weeks, not months, before they're able to really nail down the details of this and start to put it in place. The training regimen.
How hard is it to walk out of a skip with classified material?
Everybody who goes into a skip knows what the requirements are to go in, and knows what the requirements are to go out. You can't bring personal devices in, and you certainly can't leave.
No, you can't bring personal devices in, but that rack of shit in there that brings the information in and out, I designed.
With material, unless that material is appropriately secured.
And usually what happens to someone in the chain
have it secured in a lock bag. You self-report, which is exactly what the president did. Self-reported. But you self-report and you make sure that that you get the material back secured where it belongs, and that you're transparent about it.
Alex in the back, Alex.
Thank you, Admiral. I understand that the distinction you're making between offensive weapons and defensive weapons, but the Russians are not seeing that subtlety, or perhaps intentionally, right? They're calling. I mean, one of their propagandists is calling for the annihilation of Washington and Berlin and London and Paris. Now, that's just indicative of the mood in
Because of this announcement?
Well, because of this announcement, and then I think the quite irked by the German announcement, given the history. So, is it possible that they see this as a provocation to escalate? I heard one of my colleagues ask about the tactical nukes. Could this give them a pretext to use those either on the battlefield or against the Baltics or Poland, elsewhere?
The propagandists in the Russian media can say what they will. The president put it very plainly today. These tanks pose no offensive threat to Russia. They do, as I told Phil, pose a threat to Russian soldiers and units that are in Ukraine. They're very powerful, very capable, and not just the Abrams, but the Leopards that are going to be coming soon too. They're very, very powerful, but they don't pose a threat to the Russian homeland. They are designed to help the Ukrainians in what we believe is going to be a need for combined arms operations in the coming months.
Threat specifically, do you see that worsening?
I would just tell you, we don't have any indication that Mr. Putin has any intention to use weapons of mass destruction, let alone nuclear weapons, tactical or otherwise. We monitor as best we can, and we believe that our strategic deterrent posture is appropriate, but we've seen no indication that that's in the offing.
What was the president's reaction when he learned how to the American intelligence agency missed their target by 3,000? What was his reaction?
How and when it was decided to send the Abrams? I mean, was there a final, call with Chancellor Schultz or a meeting with officials that really pushed that decision across the finish line?
I think, just in general, I'd rather not get into specific interagency internal deliberations, but in general, this decision by the president was made in the last several days, this particular one. But it came, as I said earlier, on the heels of dozens of conversations at various levels of the chain of command, not just between the president and the chancellor, but the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and his counterpart, Secretary Austin and his counterpart. They were just out in Ramstein on Friday as part of this Ukraine Defense Contact Group, and the issue of tanks, particularly Leopard tanks, was absolutely on the agenda last Friday at Ramstein. So, I mean, it builds on weeks of discussions and conversations with the Germans, with our allies and other allies and partners, as well as, quite frankly, with the Ukraine. All right, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
All right, so I was typing this up, but yeah, I knew the Avenger was on its way out. I actually had the opportunity to work on the Avenger years and years and years ago. We were doing a see-through heads-up display system, so you didn't have to look down at the digital display in the middle, and the optics on the Avenger are fucking horrendous. If an aircraft is coming at you and you're trying to IFF that aircraft off of the thermal imager, that aircraft has flown over, bombed, and killed you before you will be able to IFF that fighter jet or bomber on that thermal display. It is horrendous. So you better have a spotter or somebody else that knows that that's a bad guy, and then just put the crosshairs on him and squeeze the trigger to fire that out, and the missiles will raise up and it'll go through its launch sequence and it goes. So I knew it was on its way out. So yeah, and I also know that the Ukrainians are being trained on them right now. But you can't even ID them through the thermal imager. That the image is so fucking small that you can't ID. You at a quarter of a mile, you can't ID an A-10 from an F-16. Imagine that. At a quarter of a mile, you can't tell the difference between an A-10 and an F-16. And the way I know that is because in Huntsville, Alabama, there's an airport. And Boeing has a facility, or did 30 years ago, 20 years, almost 30 years ago, 25 years ago, when I worked on the Avenger. Boeing has a facility right next to that airport. And so I was working for Recon Optical. You may know them. They're famous for designing the Lantern pod. In addition to that, I worked with them on the Crows system, which is now owned by Kongsberg. And they do the low crows, and I worked on the low crows as well. So we were putting a heads-up display on it, and then we were working with Brad Ganther from Graflex to put a 300x optical zoom underneath of the thermal imager and foresighting it to the thermal imager on the Avenger. And the system from Graflex, Brad Ganther, the system from Graflex, and there's a funny story about Brad Ganther and Graflex. Years ago, when I had invented the helmet cam for the U.S. Army Telemedical Command later to become telemedicine, I was given the opportunity to brief Al Gore at the AUSA in Washington, D.C. in the Cotillion Ballroom. And to this day, as far as I know, I am the only person that has ever had equipment demonstrated 2 years in a row at the Cotillion Ballroom at AUSA in Washington, D.C. at the Sheraton. And so the day I was supposed to brief Al Gore, they told me that I was going to be briefing Al Gore. And so I went to the captain and I said, Captain, have you ever met the vice president? He said, no, sir. I said, would you like to? He said, oh, absolutely, sir. I said, well, then good. You're going to brief him this afternoon on the thermal imager and the system for the helmet cam for the telemedical command. He's like, sir, I'm not qualified to do that. I said, it's the vice president. He'll never know. So I went, instead of going and briefing Al Gore, I took Brad Ganther's daughter from Graflex to lunch. So rather than briefing the vice president, I went to lunch with Brad Ganther's daughter. So she's a nice lady. But anyway, that's my Recon Optical Avenger missile launcher story. So I am very, very, very familiar with the Avenger missile launcher. There's not a whole lot of people who have sat in one. There's not a whole lot of people who have engineered on one. There's not a whole lot of people who know a hell of a lot about them. I have spent a lot of time working with Avenger missile launchers. And so, and trying to upgrade them and improve. You guys have to understand, for 30 years, my job was to improve the warfighting capabilities of the U.S. Armed Services. So I have worked with everything, or all the different services and all the different things throughout the world, and supporting the U.S. and the allies. I mean, I've even supported Israel. I've worked with Israel. I've worked with other countries. We've done stuff with Jordan. I did stuff for the Prince of Saudi Arabia. So there's the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. So it's not there's a lot of YouTubers. I'm not a fucking YouTuber. I'm a subject matter expert with 3 decades of experience with U.S. military weapon systems, as well as I'm a famous inventor for all of the things that I've invented. All I'm doing is sharing that 30 years of knowledge with you guys so you can understand what the hell's going on, know what you're talking about, and you don't have to listen to people who don't have a fucking clue and are lying to you. I mean, nothing pisses me off worse than somebody lying to me. And then what pisses me off, well, actually there is. What pisses me off worse than that is people who lie for a fucking living. These people who do fear porn and all this other bullshit and get paid big money for it. There are people out here with 500,000 followers who lie to those 500,000 followers every fucking day. But yet people flock to them like a moth to light. And they're lying to them. And it just burns me up. People go, it's because they've got more followers than you. I don't give a fuck if they have 1 follower. I can't stand being lied to. I despise it. So I'm here to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And that's just the way it is. And it's the hard, cold facts, folks. And if you can't handle the hard, cold facts, then go watch Fomer. Okay? Go watch Agenda-Free TV. You can see him slobber all over the screen and all that other shit. I do get irate from time to time, but you do not see foam coming out of my mouth. So, yeah, I beat my guys. I will tell them straight up, the beatings will continue until the morale improves. And I will tell you, and the guys from the 82nd Airborne will tell you I am the meanest, roughest, toughest, most abusive instructor you will ever have. I personally am responsible for making 10 of the guys from the 82nd Airborne collapse on a forced road march. And I was out there marching with them, carrying the same shit they were. I was like, motherfucker, you're 82nd. If I can fucking do it, you can fucking do it. Move. You have to be. There are people I trained 20 and 30 years ago that will recognize my voice just like that from 20 or 30 years ago. Because the way I talk and the way I yell, nobody else does it like that. So the rule is you train like you fight like you train, and my goal is to kill you as many times as I can before you go into combat, so you die for me. You don't die in combat. So I'm going to kill you every fucking way that I can kill you, so you know how you could be killed, so when you get there, some other motherfucker doesn't do it. My favorite line from Patton is, don't die for your country, make that other motherfucker die for his. I may have ad-libbed a little bit on it, but that's what you want. You want to make him die for his country. And in the words of General Zinni from the U.S. Marine Corps, one of my favorite generals, by the way, General Zinni's rule was, never send a Marine where you can send a bullet. And so I have followed that guidance from that day. And my goal is to I make drill instructors cry. So you've got to figure out the best way to put brass on target without sending your men there. And that has always been my objective. It's a whole lot easier to shoot the motherfucker than it is to fight him. So shoot him. And if he's further away, well, then hit him with something that goes further away. So, and do it accurately the first time. I remember when we demonstrated the trap to the Marine Corps for the very first time. It's a remote control weapon system. We were at Quantico. They put a bowling pin, and they had a string holding a bowling pin at 300 meters. And they said, can you hit the bowling pin? I said, it's too big. He says, what do you mean? I said, I need something more challenging. How about I cut the string, a piece of kite string, holding the bowling pin? How about that? You can't cut that string. Pow! And the bowling pin falls. Son of a bitch! Yes, sir, Marine. Yes, sir, Marine. And that's how the Marines got the crows, or not the crows, but the trap system mounted on their Humvees. That's how it was brought in. And if you want to see, there's a movie about an assassination attempt against the president where they have a remote weapon system up in a tower and they shoot the president with that, attempt to shoot the president with that remote weapon system. That is a precision remote, actually designed and developed by Graham Hawks. That's known as a trap. And that same system protects our nuclear facilities today. I'm retired. And I'm still a consultant. People still call me daily, and I still do consulting jobs. I'm fucking outrageously expensive when I do work, but and I don't work very often, but when I do, they know what they're getting and they fucking pay for it. So there's not very many companies that can afford to hire me full time. Because I charge more per hour than most people make in a week. That's right. And I provide all kinds of lessons on how to die. So anyway, let's get to the B-52s. And this is an unreal story, folks. You're not going to believe this shit. So let me see what the best way to do about showing this to you. Because I'm telling you, it irritates the bejesus out of me that our government is. I mean, look, I understand OPSEC. I understand operational security, and you don't want, for anybody to know what you're doing or where you're going or how that's working and all that. I got all that. Okay. But then, if you're going to do it, then do it in more of a clandestine way. Don't, send the stuff up. You should have flown them out of the United States at night. Okay. You don't fly them out in the daytime. And then you don't put false information out over the radio. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. So let me get into here because I've posted a lot of this stuff in Twitter for everybody to see. And I will show you this. I went for a run this morning, and I think exercise is good. So I went for a run this morning, and some local law enforcement decided to join in with me, and I've gotten a whole lot more subscribers since I have posted my exercise routine. Here it is with local law enforcement going with me. So everybody should work out. Not saying that everybody should work out like me, but you know, it's a good thing. So let me get this here. So actually, I can do it a better way. B52. All right, so that's not the one. This is the one we want right here. So this is what we know. Okay, we know that 7 B-52s left out of Barksdale down in Louisiana, and those B-52s flew up, flew across Long Island, and well, guess what? They were escorted by, I think, 5 RC-135s to refuel them, of which they did. Now, so in this video, you're going to see, not the plane we're talking about, we're going to see the contrails of the 5 RC-135s, and we're going to see the 7 B-52s going out over the Atlantic. Now, they're never seen again. So the 5 RC-135s come back in, but there is no track of any B-52s returning whatsoever. So we're going to play the video. Here it is. This is what he was trying to film. But when he turns around and looks here, okay, we can see these are the contrails of the previous aircraft that these guys are going to get fuel from. This guy's going to get fuel from this plane. This guy's going to get fuel from this plane. This guy's going to get fuel from this plane. And these guys up here are going to get fuel from these 2 planes. So there are 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 contrails. And these first 5 B-52s are going to get fuel from them. And then these other 2 guys are going to slip in and get fuel. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to pull it up. I don't have it up right now. By the time I get done pulling it up, the EAM will be over. Plus, it's not going to make anything. So count the numbers there for us for a minute. So we've got 7 of these B-52s that are flying out. Now, what's the story on the B-52s? Well, that's fucking interesting in its own, because I discovered the friggin' frigate, the Russian frigate with 16 hypersonic or hyped hypersonic nuclear missiles on board. So I discovered it. I put it out. Everybody called me a fucking liar. Later that night, I did an interview with Green Greggs, our resident on KLW World News. He is our resident rocket scientist, one of the smartest men I know. He was there. We talked about it. People were like, well, I'm not sure he's telling the truth. Nobody else is reporting this. But Canadian Prepper, to his credit, and you can rest assured I don't credit him with much, but I do credit him with, 1, being honest about where he got his information, because he got it from me, the Green Greggs. But 2, and I'm going to go find his video here, and I'm going to show it to you. And I'm going to find the,
Hi, folks. Good evening.
I'm going to find the Russian warship.
Now, I couldn't find
And here is Canadian Prepper.
the exact warship, but I did find there was an unspecified warship. This is marinetraffic.com.
Ta-da! There it fucking is. Unspecified warship. So he found it on the map. Knows exactly where it is. That is its location. Why does it say unspecified ship? Because they don't want you to know that that is a nuclear weapon equipped Russian frigate. Yeah, I'm with you, Kevin. So got to give him credit. He was actually able to go out and find that unspecified ship. New York is getting better, wonderful. I chewed his ass the other night. He's getting better. You've got to do more research. Got to do more research. You can't put out the news unless you do research. So chill. It's my show, Mario. If I want you to be my news director, I'll hire you. So I discover the vessel the first day. I show all the aircraft that are tracking the vessel the first day. I show the change in the posture of aircraft in the United States that are tracking this vessel the first day. So I confirmed it. I went public with it. Now he's moved further out. He's further out in the Atlantic. And see, that's the other thing. This frigate they claim was to come here and come down and come along the coast and go over here next to Syria. Well, if it's supposed to come down and let me change the map. So if it's supposed to come out and come down along England and come here and then go in through the Strait of Gibraltar and go across the Med and go here to Syria, if it's supposed to do that, what the fuck is it doing all the way over here? See, I tracked it all the way over here. I knew where it was going. It's supposed to be here, but I found it here. And I was the first one to find it. And then everybody said I was crazy. Well, that's fine. A lot of people say that. I may be crazy, but I'm fucking right. So we found it over here. We showed it over here. The U.S. military went nuts over here. You wouldn't believe all the shit that was flying along over here. See, they're doing it again. They had stuff all up and down here. There was a parade of aircraft up and down through here. It looked like an air show over the ocean. So it moved away. Canadian Prepper found it because when I spotted it, it was over here, not out here. When I spotted it, it was only about 100, 150 miles off the coast. Canadian Prepper spots it, it's about 200, 250 miles off the coast. So I got to give him credit. He found it on a map. And he gave us a shout out because I was the one that found it. Now, I'm sure he wasn't thrilled about what I had to say about him, but that's okay. I just tell it as it is. So, day one, I find it. Day two, Canadian Prepper talks about it. Also on day two, the Israelis put out an announcement that they want 4 of these B-52s to be part of this exercise over in Israel. Okay. The following day, it goes from that to this. The 7 B-52s that are flying over to Israel. Well, they fly out. We see them go by. We can count them. They fly over. But then, we'll watch them fly over here. That's awesome power right there. So 7 B-52s. So then after the 7 B-52s, they don't want to, they claim that not all of the B-52s flew over there. In fact, somebody put out a list, and let me go back here and let's follow this. There's a video of B-52 Stratoforces, 7 from earlier today. 4 B-52s were en route to Israel to participate in exercise Jupiter Oak. Okay. So many questions remain. Why are there only announcing, or excuse me, why were they only announced going yesterday? That's a good question. Why are there 7 of them going if they said that there were only going to be 4 needed? Why do we need 3 spare airplanes if they only need 4 to start with? And why are none of them squawking anything? Too many questions going on. Now, Intel Probe sends me this. And I said, well, that doesn't make any sense because it says that only 3 planes crossed the pond. So they launched 7 aircraft, but only 3 went over there? Excuse me? You flew 7 B-52s from Louisiana all the way to Nova Scotia, and then you turned 4 of them around and sent them back home. That makes perfect sense. Problem. None of the planes that supposedly flew back home, I can find no radar tracks of those planes, I can find no squawk codes of those planes, and I can find nobody who witnessed those planes returning to Barksdale, Louisiana. So where did 7 B-52s go? Well, if we look at it more, and if you were part of the live show last night, there's Intel Probes put out a video from Exercise at Juniper. So here we go. Let's see this. Gee, there's not a B-52 anywhere in that video, nor is there a B-52 on the fucking logo. Interesting, but that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is if they have these 7 aircraft going over there and they've canceled 4 of them, then when they get over to the other side of the pond and they have to refuel, and there's only 3 of them, well, then one would expect if there's only 3 planes that are flying over there, that, well, then you would really only need 3 refueling aircraft to refuel those planes, right? I mean, that makes sense. You got 3 planes up and you want to refuel those 3 planes to go the rest of the way across you. You would expect that those 3 planes with 3 refuelers would be able to handle the situation. But you see, that's not how it fucking works, see? There were 5 aircraft. We tracked them all last night. 5 aircraft here doing the refueling. The question is, if I only have 3 planes coming, why do I need 5 refueling aircraft? And oh, by the way, a refueling plane can refuel more than 1 plane. Yeah. So not a damn bit of this made sense. Then beyond that, as far as flying from here up, oh no, they didn't fly just from here to there. No. They flew from here all the way up to here. They could have refueled in this distance. If it was 3 planes, everybody would have been full by here. And they could have turned around and went back home. But no, they weren't full by there. Well, then if it was 6 planes, and they only had 3 refuelers, everybody would have been full by here. And then if it was 9 planes, and they only had 3 refuelers, everybody would have been full by here. But it wasn't. It was 5 refuelers, and they flew all the way over here. So this smells so bad, nothing about this is up. Not a thing. And so we're like, hello? How is this, what's going on? You can't put 100 pounds of shit in a 5-pound sack. And they're feeding us that 100 pounds of shit that 7 planes took, and 4 went back home after refueling in Nova Scotia. And then those 3 planes fly across the Atlantic, and when they come in on the other side to refuel those 3 planes, you have 5 airborne tankers. That's like following a tractor trailer around to fill up your pickup truck. Are you fucking kidding me? So this is what it ain't jiving with me at all. And if this is the kind of stuff that triggers me to say something else is going on. This is what brought me in to be able to say that the Russians were going to invade, because they kept doing shit that didn't make any sense. Just like they're sending Abrams tanks over there before they even fucking announced it. The tanks were on the train leaving on Monday. They announced it today. We announced it 2 days ago. That's fucking interesting. The official announcement was today. You just saw it. We announced it on Monday morning. How does that work? Just like the Bradleys. Just like they're supposed to be A2s, or excuse me, A1s, and they're not. 2 E8s over Georgia. Thank you. My sound is cutting out. Maybe you should check your stream. Is anybody else's sound on me cutting out? It doesn't show it here. I haven't dropped a single frame. Oh no, I'm not buying the number of tanks either, because I got the video of the train. I can show you, and you can rest assured there's way more than 33 tanks on there. So there's just a whole lot going on here that makes absolutely no sense at all. And we're going to keep showing it to you here because the more you look at it, the more it stinks. I mean, it's just a complete clusterfuck. So here we go. We've got it right here for you. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why do you need 5 refuelers to fill up 3 airplanes that only have to fly from here to there? All the further they got to fly. And you need 5 tankers to fill up 3 airplanes to fly from here to there. I mean, this is a 2-hour flight. So we're going to continue to watch it. We're going to continue to show you guys what's going on. We're going to continue to give it to you in real time. So do us a favor. Give us a thumbs up. Share us out on your social media, whatever platform you're on. We are shadow banned on YouTube. We are shadow banned on Twitter. We are demonetized on YouTube. So if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee. There's a link at the top of the chat. If you want news like this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year on a network with experts from around the world, well, that's real simple. Go to klwworldnews.com and sign up there, VIP or above. We had like 38 people sign up just yesterday because people were catching on to the fact that we tell the truth 100% of the time. And we give you information you can't get anywhere else. So, if you want to know it all, sign up. We'll be more than happy to share with you what we know. So let me see what else we got going on here. So anyway, the point is, nobody knows where they landed. Nobody knows how many flew over there. And you don't launch 7 B-52s and fly them from Louisiana all the way to Nova Scotia to make 4 of them fly back home. I'm sorry, folks. I may have been born at night, but it was not last night. And it's like I have said many, many times. This is such bullshit that Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder, and Helen Keller can see that this is bullshit. Just like Kirby said that M1 Abrams tanks have to have very special fuel, and we need to make sure that that fuel is there for them. You're a lying motherfucker. I can stop by the ABC store and fill up my Abrams. So, yeah, training exercise. Exactly. Just like the Russians said that their invasion of Ukraine was a training exercise. And we knew it wasn't. We knew they were lying. We knew they were lying the whole friggin' time. Right, exactly. Wi-Fi from Louisiana to Nova Scotia. Well, it's the way they want it. They want to have land over there. So, yeah, totally nutso what these people are claiming. So let me get this thing put back together for you. So there is all of the maps that are active. And I've got to get myself something to eat. I have not eaten yet today. So I'm going to leave the stream up. Join the network, folks. It is the best thing you can do for you and your family. Also, by the way, if you are a KLW World News member, you have to be on the roundtable tonight. If there's any way possible, you need to be on the roundtable. We're going to do it at a regular time, so we're going to delay the news broadcast for the public so that we can do a KLW World News roundtable. So the show is going to be about a half an hour or so late, maybe an hour late tonight, because we're doing the roundtable first to talk about the network. I'm going to teach you how to do encryption for you and your family and others, how you can write notes to yourself that nobody else can read. And so we're going to show you all of that tonight. I'm going to explain it to you. This is the cryptic language I'm going to teach you, and you can teach your children. You can teach your coworkers, and you can write somebody a note and give it to somebody, and that person will never, ever, ever be able to decipher what you wrote in that note. So, yeah, the roundtable is going to be on Jitsi tonight. So, and yes, have an ink pen and a pad tonight. And if you can't get on the Jitsi server because we have so many people, that's not a problem. We're going to stream it live on a closed session of YouTube so that you can see it there. And then we're just going to keep it there for our members so that they can go back and refer to that and learn how to do that encryption. But it's the cool part about it is there is no computer software in the world that is designed to hack this encryption. It is an ancient encryption, and over the years I have modified that ancient encryption And I actually gave it to a guy who was a cipher guy. And he said, Lee, you ain't got anything I can't fucking hack. I said, really? He says, yeah. He says, the systems that the government has, we can crack anything. I was like, okay. So I wrote him a letter in this encryption and gave it to him and said, what's that say? He couldn't open it. He couldn't figure it out. He couldn't open it. He couldn't crack it. I gave him 2 weeks and he couldn't fucking touch it. And then he never called me again. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck? So that's what I'm going to teach you tonight. So that is worth a year's subscription because there's no place else in the world that you can go and learn how to do encryption that nobody can crack. So, excuse me. We're going to show you that tonight. So let me get some tunes up here for you guys so you've got something to listen to. We're going to track all the maps and see what's going on over there.
Told you I was a writer for
She's a writer. What's the story? You tell me.
So in 2018, Montpelier and another town whose name I can't actually pronounce, Minescu, I think it's pronounced, they passed ordinances saying anyone can vote in our municipal elections, so local elections. They can't vote at the state level, they can't vote at federal, but it means that you don't need to legally be a resident of Vermont, you don't need to legally be an American citizen to take part in these local elections. And they said, it's good, it encourages people to participate. If you're being represented by these local governments, you should get to vote. And it was in 2020, the state legislature approved they had to change their municipal charters to approve this. And it was sued, the RNC sued in April of 2021 and said, this is crazy, like voters shouldn't just be able to come from anywhere, and it's a degradation to the integrity of elections. And it went through a couple different rulings, but basically the Supreme Court has upheld a ruling by a lower court saying the Vermont Constitution does say that you have to be an American citizen to vote in state elections, but does not place that requirement on municipal elections. So this makes these two cities in Vermont, there's a bunch in Maryland and New York City, examples of places where you don't have to be an American citizen to participate in local elections.
So I'm not a signatory on Phil's bank accounts, but I have the right to vote where that money goes. So I'm going to vote it to me.
Yeah, it also says non-residents. So it's not just illegals, but non-residents.
People
So
don't even live there.
no, so I mean, like, you could be from a different state and hop in there for a day and vote. Is that what they're saying? Like,
They have not defined, I couldn't find any examples of how clearly they've defined what their residency policy is. Like,
Wow.
do you have an address? If I have a house out of state, but I have like a vacation house there, I can vote in their local election.
So imagine,
There's no question.
so what's the population of the smallest town in Vermont that's allowing this?
They're similar sizes, so they're considered one of the outlets I was reading about this say they're the most diverse cities in Vermont. One has 8,000 people, one has 7,000.
So imagine if they have they have an election and then like 14,000 people show up.
Yeah.
In a population of 7,000.
Yeah.
Yep. I guess that's technically possible now. That's pretty funny. Yeah.
They have opened the doors to just not require anything. I mean, this is similar to the states that don't want to require ID laws.
Is that still? Does that mean it's still a felony if you vote in two places?
I guess.
It doesn't. In these towns, it doesn't seem like they care. I could not find any specific, like, well, you can't, be over here. You can whatever. It would be a felony if I am a person, a non-American citizen. I guess I live in this town. I decide to vote in the local election. If I then fill out the ballots for state or federal, it would be illegal, right? And so this is one of the objections that the RNC has raised. They're saying like, and similar arguments came up when New York decided to pass this. They're saying like, how do you prevent voter fraud? Because we're gonna have to print special ballots for people who only are voting in the local election, and that's difficult and it's more complicated. Now we have these other ballots, and we have some ballot. Like if I give you a ballot, you're like, hey, I live here and I want to vote, and they're like, cool, just only fill out the local spot, and you don't understand. You check everything. Like, is that your fault?
It sounds like a terrible idea.
Right to jail. Like,
Right to jail. Right to jail. Right to jail. It sounds like an awful idea. I mean,
Political representation. These people are
The joke I was making about your bank account is that if you allow non-citizens to vote, they will vote in the interests of the non-citizens, not the citizens. So if you live in a small town that has a gold mine within the center of it that is used to fund the medical care, people are going to be like, oh, I can vote here. I vote. I get the gold. I want to order pizza. They will. Why wouldn't they?
Well, not even non-citizens. I mean, if this is true, non-residents. I mean, to be fair, this is kind of how elections used to work. Like in 1876, what was the South Carolina, when it was going for Hayes or whatever, they had like 101% turnout, like for eligible voters or whatever. And then, like in the counties along the border with Georgia, it was like 2,600%. Like,
yeah,
it was crazy amounts.
If it's like 101, I go, well, look, like then you've got an issue of check the voter rolls. How does this make sense? 2,600 is outright like despot nonsense levels of funhouse world garbage.
Funhouse world non-garbage.
Yeah, at that point, it's just like, okay, we're in Banana Republic territory at 2,600%.
Yeah. Right. There are some states that like specifically say no matter what, you have to be an American citizen to vote here. So like Ohio's one of them.
I feel like it should not be.
You shouldn't have to say it.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a controversial take to say the people that vote in the states should be residents of those states. They should be citizens of those states. They should be citizens of the United States of America.
Just wait. The next big thing will be nativist. They'll say you're a nativist. They already say it.
Well, yeah, there's already a lot of people that have demonized the term nationalist because of the association with National Socialist or whatever. If you are a nationalist, they associate you with fascist because fascism is always a nationalist kind of ideology.
They're gonna shift from white supremacist, bigot, or whatever to nativist at some point, and they're gonna be like, it's gonna be 10, 20 years, and there's gonna be a Supreme Court battle. And they're gonna be like, these nativist bigots think that only people who live in some location can vote on the rules. And that makes no sense. Well, everyone gets to say we're all equal.
They're gonna win people over by saying like, if you live here and you're a green card holder, right? Like, I may not be super familiar with this, but like, you're not allowed to vote, but you do live in the country, right? You do have some sort of legal status here. Shouldn't you be able to participate in local elections, right? But then if they also don't require you to show any proof of residency or legal status, then there's no way to say who is actually partaking in these elections. And at that point, you don't really know what's influencing these cities' countries. I mean, Vermont is a beautiful place. Obviously, it's not the population of New York City. New York City, this becomes an even bigger issue. But to me, this feels like common sense, like you're saying, like American citizens should vote. But we know that the idea that you have to show ID when you go to vote is actually a controversial issue in a lot of places. They feel like you shouldn't have to.
I want to push back on that. It's not actually controversial. It is only controversial if you listen to politicians from the Democrats. The average American citizen does not believe that you should be allowed to vote if you are not a citizen of the state.
Sure, but they elect politicians who are okay with the policies.
Well,
so you're complicit in supporting it.
I have other issues with voting as well as this one, but the idea that it is popular in the United States, I don't think that's popular.
Did you confirm this non-resident part? You sure it's just not like non-citizen?
I went through the charter and I can't find like any indication that
they have to register and be on the voter rolls, right? Like, so you can't just like show up election day and be like, oh, I live in this neighboring county or something.
I mean, when I read it, last time I checked the actual charter change, they weren't requiring proof of ID. right? So like they are saying like you come, you vote, that's cool. They might have updated it in the it initially passed in 2018, right? So they might have updated it since, but there is no discussion of proving residency in the Supreme Court case or in the original charter.
So it's
change.
like resident honor system.
Mhm.
Like you're supposed to be a resident, but we don't actually know if you are.
Yeah.
So you could argue if that's the case, they are technically allowing non-residents, although I think it'd be important we fact check that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there is no check, but I'm happy to fact check it.
Yeah, because like, what are they actually saying? If there's no check, it may as well be anyone can vote if they feel like it.
They're saying that for locals elections, it doesn't matter, that the Vermont Constitution does not have a say over local elections. Vermont can regulate who gets to vote in state elections, and of course, the federal government regulates who can vote in federal elections, but they're saying that the Vermont government doesn't have a say over who the municipalities are okay with voting.
No, it just sounds like the end of the country, you know? You see it in New York, they've had the big move to allow non-citizens to vote. It's just like, then what do you mean?
It doesn't. I don't understand why your average resident or citizen of the states are okay with it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like mostly it's they don't realize. I really think most people don't pay very close attention to politics. Even the people that go and vote regularly don't pay nearly the attention to politics that people like us do. And so for the most part, they don't know what laws are being passed in their local areas.
Yeah, and they always start with the safest thing too. I think they started initially with school boards. So they're like, well, if your kids, maybe they were born here, they're American citizens, they're going to school, and you might be an illegal parent. Like you should be able to have a say in your kid's education. Like they kind of like pull at your heartstrings that way, and then they expand it from there. And
Incrementalism.
yeah, that's how it goes.
And then eventually, there's no country left.
Yeah, 100%. That there's no part of me that doesn't believe that there are people motivated to change the fundamental structure of the United States. And the people that say, "Oh no, there are no people that want to change the structure of the U.S." Like they're just not listening to the writers at Vox. The writers at Vox, like there's Ian Millhauser wants to get rid of the whole Senate, right? There's no reason to have a Senate because something, right? Because there's popular election of the states. There's consistently talk from people on the left about expanding the Supreme Court. There's talk about getting rid of the Electoral College. These people do not like the structure of the government. They don't like a limited government. They don't like a government that puts the individual as sovereign. These are things that libertarians are constantly screaming about. Luke would be here, putting his hand up right along with me. These people want the federal government to have all the authority, and it's likely that they're in bed with international interests.
It's been a move for a really long time to strip away the local power.
Yeah.
The 17th Amendment, I think, was a huge mistake. I remember reading about this. I think it was Ben Sass who called for repealing it. This is the amendment that gave the right to elect a senator to the popular vote in the state. All that does is erode local elections and local involvement, and that was the most destructive thing to this. One of the most destructive things to this country, because it used to be, you voted in your local elections, you knew who your state reps were. They would then go. The state senators, I believe, would appoint a senator to go to the federal government. The idea was senators represent states, members of Congress represent the people.
Yep.
And there was a reason for the distinction. With the popular vote, now it's just do the same thing. And people don't even know who their local reps are. And they're like, I have no idea. What that did was made it impossible or extremely difficult to have a convention of states and actually work on the Constitution, amend it for the better or for worse. Because now people don't even know. I don't know. Who's your local rep? Who's your state rep? Do you have any idea?
And one of the things that I find incredibly frustrating is, to your point, people don't know. And people are completely unaware of who represents them. They have no idea who their congressperson is. They have no idea who their senator is. They don't know who the senior senator is, the junior senator is. But these people feel extremely motivated every 4 years to go and vote. They don't know who they're voting for. They don't know why they're voting. They don't know the policies of the people that they're voting for. But every time some celebrity gets on TV and tells them, go vote, we got to get out there and vote for what? I have no idea. They're completely ignorant.
I just read a story today about how Seattle's running out of space for all the dead bodies from fentanyl.
That's gross.
And then I just got mad, and I'm like, why is it that all of the major cities are run by Democrats and are collapsing, are crime ridden?
Hey man, are you Alpocalypse 423?
Yeah.
What's the deal? You got me running all over.
There was a report, I think, in the Washington Post, per capita crime, top 10 cities, all Democrat. Despite the fact that there was a couple Republican-run cities that were the top population, didn't have crime, or the crime was substantially lower. Why is it? Is it because Republicans are fascists who go around arresting everybody? Is it because Democrats are extremists who release all the prisoners? What's
There may be some other correlating factors there, I think.
Like what?
Like what?
I mean, for example, of the top cities that you're mentioning, I think like most of them have like very heavy black populations, don't they? Like New Orleans, St.
Most cities
Louis,
do, though.
Detroit. No.
All the major cities?
Well, of the ones that have like, no, not exactly. I'm trying to think like if, like San Diego does does San Diego have a super heavy black population? This
Must
I
be
bet it's
equal.
comparable.
how high is Phoenix, Arizona?
Let me look up. San Diego is. It's around 10%. Oh, it's not. Is it 5%?
What's the correlation?
What do you mean?
Like you're saying these cities have.
So I mean, it's not like totally linear, but like again, these cities do have like, you know, like the demographic that commits the highest amount of murders is like young black males. If you have a lot of that, that's probably going to be that's a factor. I mean, does it correlate more than having a Democrat mayor? Probably, I would say so, because there's cities with Democrat mayors that don't have exorbitantly high.
San Diego's black population 6.6%. I don't think that aligns properly.
No, that's my point. It's like it's low.
I mean, it's like half of the national average, but I don't think.
Is it one of the top like homicide cities?
San Diego actually has lower crime, and for a while it was run by Republican.
Well, what about now? Is it
So
Democrat?
I mean, perhaps the argument is Democrats typically dominate in the black vote, and then Democrats have garbage policies which result in crime and releasing prisoners and things like that.
You can like I heard you talk about this earlier, Tim. That the fact that Rudy Giuliani went into New York City and cleaned it up, like that shows that
Right.
No matter what the racial population in your city is, because New York is, it's as mixed as it gets. And if you can go and have the right policies and take New York City from, Skid Row to turning it into what is essentially Disney World now, or up until 5 years ago. It's policies can solve problems.
Oh, policy absolutely matters, and that's why I said it wasn't linear. I just said there's other factors that probably correlate more. I mean, for example, New York City I believe it has more black people than like Chicago does, but Chicago's like way worse, obviously.
Right. That's why I don't know if it's the racial component that aligns with the crime.
No, I'm not saying that's the causal factor. I said it probably correlates more than having a Democrat mayor.
I disagree about that.
Yeah, it feels too surface level to me. Right? If New York has more black people but substantially less gun violence than Chicago, I don't see why you would draw a correlation between the racial makeup of the city and be like, oh, San Diego's got a lower black population. That explains the crime rate. Like, no, it doesn't.
No, I'm saying
because New York has a higher black population.
It's about does it correlate more or less than having a Democrat mayor?
Yeah. So when we covered this story, San Diego had a Republican mayor and crime was lower.
Okay.
New York has a lower black population than Chicago and lower crime than Chicago. So it's like I don't see the racial connection. I understand the point at the surface level, I guess, if you were just to look at it and be like, oh, hey, look at these things.
I mean, so what are the states, for example, in the United States that have like the lowest homicide rates?
Lowest?
Yeah.
I don't know.
New Hampshire, Vermont, very, very low.
Idaho. Like, I mean, these
Idaho, there's
rural states with very few people.
Yeah,
and there actually is a lot of violent crime in, say, West Virginia, where people like to say, oh, like one thing they bring up is, oh, these Democrat-run cities are really bad. And it's like, it is true. Like when you actually, like, we covered this story a couple years ago, when you look at the top crime per capita, there's a correlation between cities run by Democrats with higher crime than cities run by Republicans, but red states in general do have very high rates of violent crime too.
Sure. I mean, you can always parse the statistics out in various ways. For example, the gun control organizations, they'll always take, they'll use gun deaths instead of gun homicides, and then that way they get the statistics that they
including
want to say, like,
suicide.
well, look, all the Republican states actually have higher rates of gun death than the Democrat states do. And then they look at states, they don't look at municipalities and how those are run. So, you can cherry pick it any which way you want.
Well, so here's a good question: like, why are most major cities Democrat? No, hold on.
Yeah.
Why are cities in general Democrat? In general,
Yeah.
go to West Virginia, go to any urban center, no matter how small it is, for some reason Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, this is a global phenomenon typically where like urban centers tend to be more left. Generally, I think when people congregate and they become like sort of concentrated in certain areas, they just think differently. They don't have the same day-to-day experience as people in more rural areas historically. So
You interact with your neighbor a lot more, I find. You know what I mean? And because you see your neighbor all the time, you think more about your neighbor. I don't know if that's
wait,
correlated.
in urban areas or rural areas?
In urban areas, for sure. So maybe because of that, then you think when you hear something saying, "Oh, well, this is better for all of us," you hear the flowery language saying, "It's better."
You feel like people in urban areas interact with their neighbor more than like people in the suburbs.
I think that's completely right.
I think
I don't
that,
know,
like,
but
I feel like they ignore them completely.
Yeah, totally. But I
no,
think
bro.
they see them in person.
I think
that's all.
that, like, seeing someone and actually interacting with them is so different,
different,
right?
yeah.
We've
People
talked.
know.
We've talked to a certain degree with our neighbors out here.
Mhm.
In New York, I lived above, below, side to side, and behind a person, and I never saw them. Never
Well,
talked to them. Never
totally.
interacted
No.
once.
Totally. I don't mean interact. I just mean like you see them in person. Like
No.
you see the people. I just mean you see the people. Not that maybe you didn't interact. Maybe you didn't see them that often.
We
But
see-
I'm just trying to speculate here and come up with something.
I think in cities, Luke Rudkowski made this video 10 years ago where he said, he goes on the subway all the time and there's millions of people coming in and out and they never once stop and talk to each other.
There's a huge government scandal going on that you need to know about. The government is actually stealing money from American citizens.
So he decided one day just to talk to them and ask them, and then he asked them about conspiracy theories and stuff. It was kind of funny. But it's a good video. But he makes a good point. Yeah, I think in cities they don't talk to each other.
Yeah, I don't mean talk. I mean like literally see them.
I don't
Literally
think
see
that's
them
the case.
at all.
I can't tell you what my neighbors look like. I can tell you what my neighbors out here look like.
Yeah,
Like
true.
to a certain degree, like we have to talk to them. In the city, like I said, I was in an apartment above someone, below someone, had two apartments to the side, and an apartment behind me.
Mhm.
It was you go out the door, and there's a stairwell, and then there's apartments all around it.
Totally.
And then there's one corner, and then behind. I can't tell you what they look like.
Yeah, true. I mean, you definitely have more community in small towns. Definitely, because like that's just reality. You have to rely on your community in a small town.
You're
I'm
more likely
trying
to know who
think
your cops are.
Right, exactly. I'm just trying to
Maybe
come up
that's-
with some kind of reason.
Well, the one thing about cities is cities do attract people that want to be in cities. Like you hear the stories all the time about kids that leave their small town to go to the big city. But there are kids that are like, I don't want to go to the big city. I like it. Like you definitely have temperaments, people that have a temperament that is more conducive to wanting to live in an urban area versus someone that wants to live in a rural area. And then of course you do have a certain amount of people that would go to a city and be like, this is not for me, or vice versa.
Yeah,
But I think that the people that have that are inclined to go to cities and seek out that kind of lifestyle probably have the same inclination to be like, oh, I think that the government should provide services and et cetera, things like that.
I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out like we asked why is Democrats? Do you have a reason?
Maybe. Well, I'll tell you this: Democrat policy, I think, leads to higher crime rates.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just they're really good at scaring people into falling in line and joining the cult, I guess.
Yeah.
It would be
like
hard-
your video earlier about that, how it's just people to just go and vote because everyone
Like,
tells them to go vote.
When you say, there's a meteorologist in New York, Fox News got beaten up by a bunch of teenagers,
right,
Subway. Yeah.
and the police said, we're not going to arrest or charge them because they were 15 and 17 or whatever.
Well, they said it would be a misdemeanor, and it's like, how is it a misdemeanor when this guy has like very visible marks from being brutally assaulted? That's
But
crazy.
because of their ages, they weren't charged. They were released to the parents. So these are the policies that Democrats enact. Look, I get it, man. I don't like cash bail. I think we need prison reform. I think we need more police accountability. But like just releasing criminals doesn't seem to make sense.
No, but the options that have been brought, the ideas that have been brought up to deal with the overcriminalization, maybe you call it in the U.S., they're not good ideas. Like nobody, like the idea of getting rid of the police totally,
Well-
that's a terrible idea because they're talking about replacing them with social workers that are completely and totally incapable of securing an area to try to deal with whatever's going on.
I think
You know?
part of it is like this idea, like with the meteorologist, that well, their kids, we don't want to mark them with this record, we'll release them to their parents. Like, I don't necessarily agree with that, but like there are a lot of places, rural and not, that try to prevent children, especially from being unfairly punished for crimes that, like, if you were an adult committed, would be pretty serious. So, like, I wrote this article last week about
Happened earlier this month at Speedway Galleon Street in Venice. You see the woman pushing a stroller, then a car drives straight into them, while sending them both flying into the air. The car then kept on going, but was chased down by onlookers. Investigators say the 16-year-old driver was under the influence of drugs and driving a rental car. And we're told he was released to his parents because he's underage, and this is not considered a violent crime.
Alakablam! Who says the universe doesn't have a sense of humor? I think this story proves that it does, Abe. This thing's got all of it right here. At the beginning of this video, you saw that clip where this lunatic ran down a mom walking her baby, strollering her baby, her tiny infant-sized baby, and the son of a bitch goes right directly into him. You saw this last year. It was a viral video. It was brutal. The mom's doing everything she can to get that baby out of the way. Then after she gets hit by this lunatic, her legs are all shattered. She's all busted up. She invokes all of that mom energy on, stands up, runs over there, checks on the baby, and then thank God that there's a dude in a solar-powered truck. Oh, wait, no, it's a diesel-powered Hemi. Slams into this asshole, stops him from fleeing, and the dude who ran him in the truck probably spent more time in prison because, surprise, the dipshit in that car that was stolen was a 16-year-old dipshit. So they let him go immediately. And the dude who hit him in the truck, oh, gotcha, just going to be a vigilante. He was going to run away. He was going to flee. He just ran over that. He directly took that stolen car and rammed a mom and a baby. And now I'm going to go to prison for something. That's how LA works. LA's too busy over there making sure that they're giving out free drug needles to Democrat assholes. And then you get this type of criminality going on over here. But the universe said, nah. Bam, 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 bam. And now that kid's dead. Surprise. Surprise, Abe. Shocked. Stunned that the 16-year-old who's stealing cars, running them directly into moms and babies, I'm surprised that once he got out of detention camp, he wasn't a stunning and brave space engineer. Wow, he kept doing life subscribe. Oh, I'm shocked over here. Dumbass leftards. Anyway, Gateway pundit, LA teenager is murdered after serving light sentence for running over a mom and a baby. Hey, Los Angeles Police Department, after you figure out the whole Paul Pelosi hammer raping, go check the baby. Maybe the baby did it, right? Do some of that gunpowder fingerprint residue. See if that baby got a hold of a gun and took care of this business himself. That would be interesting, right? Probably not. But anyhow. Teenager who got a slap on the wrist for intentionally running over a mom and a little baby was recently gunned down on the streets. Fox News reported Friday that 17-year-old Christopher Baca, the perpetrator responsible for the hit and run, was killed in Palmdale, California earlier this week. Here's the full deals. So that kid, 17-year-old, stole a car, ran over the mom, got out of jail immediately, and let him go, what do you want to arrest? You want to arrest 17-year-olds? You can't arrest 17-year-olds. Slavery. I don't know what this has to do with any of this. All of your stupid nonsense with criminal reform where you let criminals do whatever the hell they want because of slavery times, it's led to this. You got a 17-year-old. He runs into these, he steals a car, runs into these people. And you guys won't arrest anybody. Well, he's 17. What do you want to do? I want you to arrest him harder. Arrest him harder. More time on the books. But he's just a kid. If you're 17 and you're stealing cars and you're running into people, chances are you're not going to get over that your senior year of high school. You're going to continue to be a dipshit. Surprise, surprise. I say arrest him even harder. I say we stack on some more stuff to when kids are doing stupid shit like this. So all of this has to do with leftism. Every aspect of this. You won't arrest anybody. You want to handle all of this criminality with kid gloves unless it's a conservative. You're a conservative and you jaywalking after criminal cops in the Washington Capitol shoot your daughter unarmed. They will arrest the shit out of you. Right? If you're a conservative, if you voted for Trump, if you voted for Larry Elder in California, they will arrest the hell out of you. If you're a Democrat shitbag with any of the paraphernalia on you, if you've got, I don't know, a meth pipe, a a BLM patch, a rainbow anything. You can do whatever you want in this shithole, and they won't arrest you because you're part of the establishment foot soldiers. And that's how you get this here. They're stealing cars. They're raping people. They're carjacking, and nobody ever gets arrested in this shithole. That's going to lead to more of that. And that's how you get a 17-year-old who ends up getting shot and killed over here. So this is all your fault, lefties. Every aspect of this. The shithead stealing cars, the shithead getting blasted later on. That's all your fault. You got a weird feeling that the person who shot this dipshit doesn't legally have that gun. I'm sure that they're not registered. They haven't gone through all the California bullshit. You got to hand over your motherfucking DNA to buy bullets in this stupid fucking state. But I got a weird feeling, despite all of those stupid fucking laws that only impact law-abiding citizens like my goofball self over here, I'm gonna spend 8 fucking hours in order to get a fishing rod in this fucking place because of the fucking paperwork over here. I got a weird feeling that the people who shot this dipshit over here didn't go through all of that. But yeah, you dumb fuckers are gonna want more and more and more and more and more and more and more paperwork on people like me. I'm only using my fishing rods to blast criminals. See, that's the problem. They don't want you blasting criminals. They don't want you to know. They want the criminals to go out there and proliferate their criminality. And so, there you go. Every aspect of this is you fucking leftards. Then, once you find one of these dumb assholes stealing cars, run motherfuckers over, you don't arrest them. What do you want us to do? Charge them as an adult? Charge them as an adult? You motherfuckers want 16-year-olds to vote in this stupid fucking state? Oh, 16-year-olds. Oh my God, I can't believe that we're oppressing 16-year-olds over here. They need to vote. I gotta listen to that stupid fucking potato shake that dipshit about fucking climate change because she's 16. When it comes to this nonsense, you motherfuckers love 16-year-olds. I know Joe Biden loves the shit out of 16 and 14-year-olds. But when your 17-year-olds are running motherfuckers over with stolen cars, you're like, oh, well, listen. What do you want? You want to charge them? Fuck yeah, I do. It's weird. It's weird. That was a conservative. If that kid's parents voted for Trump, he'd be arrested. I'll tell you right now. Anyhow, there you have it. Universe bends towards good, solves this problem itself, I guess. Dipshit who ran over mom is found dead. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching the video. Support the channel. You want to be kept up to date with this LA hellscape. Hit that subscribe button and make way, because the salt must flow.